Hi, and welcome to the Maine Take. My name is Dana Connors. I'm pleased to be a host of this program brought to you by the Maine State Chamber of Commerce. On each episode, whether that's twice a month or while the legislature is in session every single week, we like to take a look at the issues, the ideas, and the initiatives that work in our state, helping to improve the lives as well as the livelihood of Maine people. Today, we are with our partners going to take a look at our recent initiative that we just shared on July the 20th. It was an event called Issues and Answers, and the program was a program we've had in place since 2009, and that initiative is called Making Maine Work. As I said, it's been in place for 13 years. We've had 8 reports. It was founded by 2 organizations, the State Chamber and the Maine Development Foundation, and we were pleased to add Educate Maine to the trio. And in that time, we put out 8 reports. 5 of them dealt with subject matters. 3 of them were dealing with the workforce, preparing them, growing them, as well as the influence of the immigrant community. The other 3 had to do with gubernatorial elections and the priorities that we wanted to share with the candidates to try to make them aware of what the business community, what the nonprofits were thinking of importance to them, and most importantly, to see if the candidates would embrace those priorities and make it part of their agenda. And such has been the case. The first year we did it was 2010. As we came out of a recession, the issues, to no one's surprise, had to do with ways to move our economy forward. Regulations, personal income tax, cost of healthcare insurance, but nowhere on that top 5 did we see workforce. As a matter of fact, the 3 categories of professional skill and the entry level were 11, 14, and 18 in standings. In 2018, when the election was held, a new governor, Governor Mills, was chosen, following Paul LePage. The issues at that time were quite different. Workforce was no longer below the top 5. They were 3 of the top 5. It was professional, it was skilled, it was the entry level. In addition to that, it was a healthcare or health insurance cost, as well as broadband. And out of that administration, those recommendations, we are proud to say that you've seen what's happened with broadband, and out of that came a very strong recommendation, which we're also pleased to be able to say that the governor brought together 1,300 people, and the strategic plan was formed and put in place. Historic for the state of Maine. This time around, of course, with the influence of the pandemic, with inflation following, with the war in Ukraine, with supply chain issues, it was important to do it again. So in 2022, when the survey was done, to no one's surprise, the results came forward, a close tie between the cost of energy as well as the entry level dealing with the workforce. And skill, as well as a professional employee, was still in the top 6. But that was followed by housing, something we hadn't seen before. And even though health insurance costs have been at the top of the list in the 2 previous surveys, this time it was number 5. So it truly reflects the value of reaching out to our various business community and nonprofits to determine at this point in time, based upon economic circumstances, what are the issues that are most important in terms of growing our economy. We do that through a survey, extensive survey from 500 to up to 1,000 people. We do it through research. We do it by reaching out to people. And out of that, we establish goals and recommendations. And I'm pleased to say that the 2 organizations joining me today, represented by Breen, who's the president and CEO of Maine Development Foundation, and Jason Judd, who is executive director of Educate Maine, is here to discuss with me those goals and some of the recommendations within each. Thanks, guys, for being with us. And thanks most of all for your role, your impact in terms of helping to shape what I find to be a timely and important initiative, particularly at a time of such uncertainty and stress and anxiety. I think I hope you'd agree that this is not just informational, it's transformational in many ways. What's been your reaction from the board or your members, as hopefully a number of them have reviewed this and seen what's before us in this report? What's been your reaction? Yellow?
I think what's nice that we see in Making Maine Work in 2022, like we have in the past, is the convergence of the insights on the ground, of the real experience of Maine businesses, coupled with all the data and analytics that we can get our hands on, whether it's through measures of growth, whether it's through the state economist, whether it's through housing studies or international data. So the convergence of perception and data, lends it great grounding and truth and kind of reality checking. And so I think the reaction I've heard is it's spot on. And the workforce issues have been red hot. They were red hot in 2019 before the pandemic. They're even more red hot now. Some of that's our demographics coming home to roost. And then the other issues out there, I think housing exploding towards the top of the list for the first time, in the 12 years that we've done this is pretty remarkable, but not surprising.
Yeah. Jason?
My board certainly had a similar reaction. These themes really go across, a variety of different sectors, and there's a lot of agreement on the workforce issues certainly being at the top, and certainly the ongoing challenges with the costs of energy, housing, and healthcare specifically. So certainly my board was very confident in the results here, as well as the goals specifically, and I've really talked quite a bit recently about how we need to just keep coming together to work on these issues collectively. So they're very supportive of our three organizations leading this work and working closely, regardless of who the next governor might be.
Yeah, and you both said it, and I only repeat it for emphasis, but that is the secret sauce. Now that we've given a pathway forward that's complementary to the strategic plan and recommends that we stay the course, it's important for us to be sure that we don't lose sight of how important it is for all of us to stay together and work together, because that will be the results that we hope to gain and have a positive impact on. Let's get into the goals themselves. I'll kick it off because it's probably the easiest one, because the proof has been well established as to how important this strategic plan has been. It came together, like I said in the introduction, 1,300 people coming together at the call of the governor from all over the state. They put together a plan that in 2019, a year after we had proposed this to the governor, that not only set forth an incredible plan in terms of priorities. We all know that you can't do everything, but what can we do that would do the most for our economy and our people? And that's what we found that this plan embraces: the workforce issue, innovation, and those key investments. And who would have thought in 2010 that childcare issues, housing issues, broadband, and even transportation, but a different focus on transportation, would find its ways in a short period of time from not even appearing in the top 10 to be front and center. I think that's remarkable. It probably speaks to the value of the survey and the Making Maine Work report, or at least I would hope that it would. So the strategic plan has proven its worth, both in terms of looking forward, but then when we had the pandemic, it was reinforced time and time again. It was remarkable as to how it helped us through those most difficult times, and continues to do it with the pandemic, with the inflation and other issues before us. But it also calls upon, nothing is ever done in 1 year that predicts with certainty what lies ahead, any more than in 2019. We thought the pandemic was going to hit us, but it did, and we're still living with it to a degree. So a strategic plan, like any good plan, needs to be updated. It calls for it in this where it's appropriate, and also to give the people a timely report. Are we making progress? Are we slipping in areas? What is the status? So I think just one of the goals, the first goal, was let's not give up on something that has served us well and continues to do so. And if we need to change it as time goes on, we certainly are committed to do that. So yellow, or let me turn to Jason, because the other one of the top ones had to do with workforce. So You're involved in workforce from an educational point of view every single day. It's your mission. Tell us about what we said there.
Thanks, Dana. We certainly are involved. We're constantly finding ways to grow the future workforce in the state at Educate Maine, and certainly in partnership with you two and your organizations. So Goal B is really focused on the workforce recommendations. As Dana mentioned, 3 out of the top 6 priorities for the next governor directly connected to workforce, the availability of entry-level workers, of skilled technical workers, as well as professional workers specifically. And we know sort of, the direct connection between available workforce and available housing, which was also in the top 6. So the first thing we really need to do, across a whole variety of sectors is really to increase participation in the labor force. So Maine has a lower workforce participation rate than many of other states across the country, and certainly below the average. So the report outlines specific populations that are not as connected to the labor force as we would like them to be, and specific strategies to use to get more disengaged youth, more people that are new to Maine, and refugees, immigrants, and others connected to the workforce. Really trying to increase that number, because we need to address the workforce with both the people who live here that are in our local communities, get them connected, but also the folks that are new to Maine and just moving here to participate in the workforce. So Goal B really outlines a variety of different recommendations to help folks upskill, to make businesses diverse and welcoming workplaces, so that diverse workers will feel welcome and they'll stay and continue to be loyal to Maine employers. And then really endorsing some of the public-private partnerships that we have going already that have had great success, like Live and Work in Maine and Maine and Company and others, that really partner with government, partner with employers and nonprofits and others to attract more people to our state. So if we can do that well over the next 4 years, hopefully we won't see workforce as 3 out of the top 6 challenges, and we'll revisit some of the data that we saw back in the early days of this report. If we don't follow through with some of these recommendations, I'm very worried for the future of our economy, specifically, as certainly are the employers across our network that produced data and feedback on this particular report. So workforce is huge, and we put it front and center in the plan, and we hope that the next governor makes it front and center as an agenda item.
Yeah, yellow, another one that was such a foundational feature in our strategic plan was innovation. And I know that you have covered this in a number of ways, measures of growth being one of them, certainly, and a strong advocate for it. There's also one that's kind of misunderstood in terms of its value, its importance. I read recently where it contributes to 50% of our GDP growth is attributed to new ways, new products, and productivity, if you will. Speak to that one and its impact, its importance, and why and what we recommend under that.
Yeah, it's crucial, and it's kind of the twin to the human talent issue. The number and the work ethic of Maine people, but then you have to put the right knowledge and processes and innovation and creativity in their hands to succeed, and that's where the innovation piece comes into play. And there's so many different angles to innovation. Making Maine Work speaks to most of them. One is the obvious mental image we all have of the startup business that is, bringing a brand new idea or a brand new product or a piece of software that never existed before into the market. And we have such great entrepreneurs in Maine, MTI and others work with, that the Top Gun programs and the Startup and Create programs here in Maine. But then there's also the hardcore innovation that occurs in research labs like Jackson Lab and at UMaine. One of the powerful things about the 10-year strategic plan that you talked a lot about, Dana, is that it was really based in an analysis of what thing does Maine already have more of than the country proportionately that are high productivity and fast growing. And some of those are traditional natural resource-based industries like forestry and fisheries, but thinking differently about them. What are the biofuels, the biomaterials, the bioplastics, the biotextiles that we can bring out of the Maine woods? There's a great phrase floating around now. Maine will never be Silicon Valley, but maybe we can be nanocellulose Valley, which is that microscopic components of the tree that you can turn into literally anything that you can turn fossil fuels into. So that hardcore sort of research piece that can transform entire industries over the years in our state and is. But then finally, we talk in Making Maine Work quite a bit about what I kind of think of the bread and butter of just day-to-day process improvement that every single business needs to be engaged in. So it might not be, a brand new earth-shattering product that you can get a patent on, but it's a different way of doing business that gets more out of the limited workforce that we do have, that gets more out of the limited raw materials we do have, and does it ideally in an environmentally friendly sustainable fashion. So, just that creating that culture and that incentive for day-to-day bread and butter innovation in Maine is so crucial as well.
Well, you're certainly right. And that culture is, as you said it well, is so much a part of every business, regardless of size or location. And it matters a lot in terms of the future success. The other three items that we spoke of, you touched upon one, Jason, had to do, they were cost factors. And it's not put forward as a discouraging message because our recommendations suggest ways that we can improve upon each of these. So let's take each of those three: health, energy, and housing. And you touched upon housing, but let me throw it back at you in terms of what's recommended within that goal to improve both access as well as affordability of housing.
Thanks, Dana. And certainly we hear this theme from employers constantly. They're able to attract workers, to accept positions here in our state, but they're not able to secure affordable housing to be able to keep that job for a long period of time. And it's put a huge strain on the workforce. So our recommendation in this section is really to establish, very concrete goals for the construction of new housing, really at every price point. So certainly we've had great investments in affordable housing over the last couple of years, and certainly a lot of development in housing as well. But we need to keep on and keep growing our targets for the next 4 years and make sure that housing is sort of all levels. So not just affordable housing, but workforce housing, so that the variety of workers, whether they're working in entry-level positions or professional positions, can have the housing that they need, regardless of where they live specifically. And this is not just a problem in Southern Maine, like some people might think, where housing stock is certainly at a premium, but we're hearing this from rural employers. We're hearing this in all counties across the state, because Maine has certainly welcomed so many great people to our state to buy houses, but not all of them are actually working here in the state. So we've got to make sure that the people living and working here also have the housing needs that they need so much to accept those family sustaining wages and raise their families here in our state. So really, we want a plan. We want a specific timeline. We need significant investment, and we really just need to make sure we're not only getting housing for one particular income level of family, but instead looking at the full range, from entry-level wages on upward.
Yeah, it strikes me, based on what you said, that there's a very strong need of trying to really figure out what our path forward is in housing to be able to address the issues, not just to assume that we know or react to what we see, but to plan accordingly. And we've seen the value of that in the strategic plan. We've seen the value of it in planning when it comes to climate challenge with the governor's climate action plan. Maine won't wait. And here again, it seems to me that what we're asking for is something very similar. And I guess you could make the case without a doubt in the world, the same could be said of another issue that you have, Yellow, and that's energy. So why don't you touch upon that and then proceed right into the health, because that too is an issue that is a cost factor that we all live with and are concerned about.
Yeah, like with housing, we call in Making Maine Work for a real concerted long-range strategy that balances our desire to shift to sustainable renewables and get off of fossil fuels with what are the inevitable sort of volatility and cost risk with that for existing and future industry who needs predictability, needs affordability in energy. We're not saying in this report that we can solve in Maine these worldwide global megatrends that have driven up the cost of energy, and now luckily it's coming down. But over a period of time, we have to at least try to moderate that volatility. Manufacturing is important in Maine, will continue to be important in Maine. And as we get the next generation of manufacturing, energy is crucial to the viability of that sector. So we call for a balance there of doing what we did with the 10-year plan, which is not just saying we want to grow the mix of renewables, but what is the overall vision of how to balance competitiveness and cost. With health insurance, this, as you said, was #1 for a decade, and now it's still in the top 5. It was interesting for all of us, I think, to see what would happen after the pandemic with this particular issue area. But it's still significant. I'd say by far our most important recommendation is you can't control cost unless you can positively impact the health of Maine people. We have so many avoidable disease and death issues in Maine, many of them connected to obesity, many of them connected to smoking and other tobacco use still. And so what are all of the controllable costs in health in Maine that at the same time make Maine people healthier and live longer? So it's a win-win. So again, none of our 3 organizations are experts in healthcare delivery. We talk to experts, we listen to experts, and in the end, really looking for that balance point where we can improve outcomes and control costs at the same time.
Yeah, and I just want to reinforce what we've tried to say both in the report as well as here today, that when you look at the state of Maine, we're well positioned because we're willing to look at ourselves in the mirror and acknowledge what our issues are. And this report is not to focus on the problems because they are problems, but to look at them in terms of turning them into opportunities to serve the economy. And that's the message we try to impart when we do this. It's not to whine and complain as, oh, woe is us, because so many of these issues, particularly in this recent time, is directly associated with inflation, with our conditions following the pandemic, with all the issues that we know, and certainly the impact of the war in Ukraine. But in my mind, this is an encouraging type of report, not a discouraging type of report, because the other thing I guess I would acknowledge and appreciate your reaction to, when you think about the strategic plan and you think about how on 3 different occasions we've taken a snapshot of the economy and how it responds to the conditions at that time, then we take the measure of growth, which kind of follows through with your organization, Yellow, and puts us in context with the issue, but also where we are faring, good or bad. All of that is incredibly significant and provides us that sense of hope, not of discouragement. Would you see it the same way?
No, it's like watching your own kids grow up versus someone else's. Sometimes you barely notice. But when I began working in education issues in Maine in the late 90s, we were somewhere in the low 20s in terms of the percentage of Maine people with a degree beyond high school. Now we're in the low 50s percentile wise. We made dramatic progress over the last 25 years. It just sometimes each year that progress is imperceptible. So that kind of circles all the way back to your point about, that old saw that, a mediocre strategy persistently and well executed will beat a brilliant one that, you change every day or sits on the shelf.
Yeah.
So that persistence factor of what can we achieve over 20 or 25 years, we have done it in Maine. We just need to keep doing it on each of these issue areas we're talking about today.
Jason, feel the same way?
I certainly do. I mean, we need to keep up the investment, especially in these issue areas that we've all talked about, and certainly support the plan regardless of the political changes. And I think echoing Yellow's point, if we can make incremental progress each and every year and stay on our targets, we can really address these particular issues. And I've been impressed that we have, in a number of key areas, broadband being one, certainly over the last few years. So I'm very optimistic. And I think, as we talked about earlier, if we keep working together on it and kind of working through these difficult conversations and difficult topics about different approaches, but with similar goals, I think we can certainly get there and continue the great progress moving forward.
Yeah, when you think back to I mentioned the workforce initiatives that we had conducted as part of our 8-report journey over 13 years. And one of them was preparing, one of them was growing, and the other had to do with immigrant influence. We did one in the university system, but also quality early care and education. When you look at early care and education as well as the workforce, well, workforce is still around and we still continue. It's everything that you both have said. It's a journey, not a quick fix. And I'm struck by the advancements that have been made in Maine Spark, how the report that we did in actually preparing our people. I'll always remember this statistic. It said, this was a national statistic. It had some relevancy, I'm sure, to here in Maine, but perhaps not the same. That report said, if you interviewed at the national level, higher ed, as to what their opinion was on the preparation of students that was coming from their institution, they just said they're 73% prepared. If you went to businesses and asked them how those same people were prepared for their industry, it was 43%. And we were placing our focus on one single pathway when it came to education. Maine Spark has turned that model not to the disregard of that one pathway, but complemented it with the skills, with the trades, and made it a real whole life experience from our very earliest ages to our adult learner and the value that each of them play. So when you think back over the years, how many great initiatives have been put in place to address the issues, the problems that we have uncovered or discovered, it's pretty remarkable, and it speaks well of what we have going on here in Maine. Speaking of what goes on well here in Maine is the partnership that the two of you have with us. And I frankly, even though I won't be around after this, at the end of this year, I look forward to a continued relationship, and I can thank you immensely for your support, your leadership, and your relationship that you both have given in your respective roles in the State Chamber of Commerce. I thank you immensely, and I do so from the bottom of my heart. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, and thank you, Dana, for all you've done for our state.
Thank you, Dana. Appreciate your leadership.
The main take for this program reminds me of a song. It will date me significantly, but nevertheless, I'm going to use it. It's a song that probably the music enthusiasts would remember it. I think it came out of the early 60s by Dinah Washington, and I'm going to change one word, but here is the title of that song, As She Saw It. What a difference a day makes. Well, to help me frame today's program, I'm going to change just one word, but that one word is important. What a difference a plan makes. I know it's shameless to do that, but like I said, it helps me to not only frame today's program, but it clearly speaks to the value of a plan, of having in place priorities that reflect what the economy needs, what the business community responds to as value to help grow the economy. It truly does make a difference, and we have seen it time and again in our state. And you witness some of the various efforts that we've already put in place that has proved its worthiness. And the counter to having a plan to guide us is one that also follows certain words, and that is, when you don't know where you're going, any pathway will do. And that is unfortunate because it won't get us to where we need to be. Because in today's world, there are so many issues that influence an economy. Who'd have thought in 2010 that childcare, that housing, that broadband, and a different transportation means would be so prominent in the priorities of the day? But that's what it is. That's what's taken place. And that's what we need to address. So it does require a plan. It does require the presence of an initiative like Making Maine work. The 8 reports that have been conducted today's really focused on 3 of those that were gubernatorially focused, that based on a survey, based on research, based on expert testimony and inclusion, we were able to take that survey and its priorities at the time, based upon circumstances in the economy at that time, and create goals and objectives that would serve the economy and the people of our state. They were a snapshot in time, but a very important snapshot in time. They helped us move forward. And let's think about it as evidence. In 2010, we've just come out of a recession. Not surprisingly, the top issues at that time, and bear in mind, at that time, was the cost of health insurance. It was regulations. It was personal income tax. It was energy. And nowhere in that top 5 would you find workforce. As a matter of fact, professional was, I think, number 11. The skill was 14, and the entry level was 18. But it sure was different in 2018 when the economy had improved and the survey issues said that workforce, all 3 of those levels, skill, professional, and entry, dominated the top 5. The other 2 remained. Health insurance is number 1, but in that mix was broadband. Significant change. And out of that, not only did Governor LePage embrace that report by putting forward initiatives around regulations and personal income tax, so did Governor Mills when she took office following 2018, put in place a highly recommended from this group strategic plan, but also placed the priority on broadband that we've seen pay dividends time and time again as we move forward. Yeah, those were important issues, and at that time really helped to move us forward. And such is the case in 2022. And I repeat, we said it before, that while health insurance is number 5, not number 1, not surprisingly, workforce entry level this time was tied with the energy cost 1 and 2. Following that was the skill, housing, health was number 5. So once again, it was a reflection of the time and the conditions, and showed the role of the strategic of the Making Maine work, survey, research, and the goals and recommendations. And this time around, the goals, as we saw in the past, came forward out of that survey, and we have, please continue the strategic plan, it's proven its worth time and time again. Let's stay true to what it said in workforce. Let's stay true to what it said about innovation. Let's talk about the cost factors in health, in housing, and energy. Those are all issues that are front and center on the minds of our people, our businesses, and certainly will help with the economy. My final thought is this. Is there evidence that the Making Maine work runs in conflict or competes with the strategic plan? No, quite the contrary. Actually, it complements, it confirms the value of the strategic plan and gives us a moment to reflect and think about what we've endured in these past 2 years. And that's why we did it after 4 years during an administration, not at the end of administration, because things could change. But we have found that our survey proved us in a fine position, and the work Making Maine report work built upon that. So good things came from it. When they say that, and it's true, nothing changes if nothing changes. But we all know that the economy does change. We also know that we are well planned, that we have the means to check on that periodically. And most of all, the plan is there, the priorities are established. Now it's left for us to do our part, which is to work with others and to be sure that we fulfill the promise that the plan set forward for us. That is Maine Take and the takeaway for this week. We thank you so much for joining us once again. We're going to see you back here right after Labor Day. In the meantime, as we always say, in a world where you can be anything, be kind to yourself and be kind to one another. Until I see you again, enjoy this beautiful summer weather. I'll see you back here right after Labor Day. Take care. Bye-bye.